first time using Webflow, I would love to hear, like, when did you first start using it?
I actually used it last year, not extensively, but I was fascinated seeing the capabilities, what we can achieve using Webflow. And if you know few CSS, then it's like the whole world out there for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Dheeraj and Suraj, do you have any inputs on how you started using Webflow? No worries, Yash. I hope you recover soon. Suraj, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Hey, Madhuri.
Hi, Suraj.
Just started Webflow last week. It was a landing page, and I was like super awesome. I can design and develop everything by myself. Like awesome.
Awesome.
I'm a developer anymore.
Nice, nice. I love the no dependency part, right, Colleen? The absolutely no clue. This thing that from zero to suddenly superpowers that have come in. Awesome. So it's 6:33. Nice. Welcome. We have around 15 plus people. Amazing turnout, and we will keep adding people in. But say welcome to Colleen. Even if you have to type in hi, please put it in the chat. Colleen is a big supporter and a big part of the Webflow community. I have met her during my ODNC days, and we've had a lot of fun chatting on things and concepts. But finally, I found the opportunity to get her, and she's the best person to talk about Webflow careers. Let's get started, Colleen. I will open up to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much for the invite. I'm so excited to be here. So feel free to ask me questions. There's some construction going on, so I have a little bit of a weird setup. So if you see me looking off, I've got a second screen so that I can see the chat, and then the screen that I'm looking to here. So Webflow definitely gives superpowers. I was so excited to find it a couple of years ago. So just a little bit about my background, and that is I used to do product development. As a kid, I always loved the process of going through and creating things from nothing, ideally things that solved a business problem, but didn't always. Sometimes it was just the pursuit of creating something new and bringing it into the world in some way. And product development was one of the ways that I was able to kind of go ahead and do that. I didn't necessarily have the technical skills to do things myself, but it was a way of being part of a creative process. And so for a couple of years, I worked for startups that were mostly in the vehicle tracking and driver safety space. So not exactly established companies where because they're a startup, you're wearing a lot of different hats, and there's not necessarily a lot of precedent to fall back on. And I think that kind of a little bit of that chaos is one of the reasons that I really enjoy no code. It's a very young field in a lot of ways, even though that there are some companies that have been around for a while. Also, part of my journey, I had mentioned about working with different startups. Some of that has been startups that have done well, startups that haven't gone anywhere. And it was always kind of a bit frustrating to be relying on developers or other folks to basically make an idea come to life. And if they got distracted by something else, all of a sudden things just sort of went poof. So being able to find no code and start developing my own sites was really pretty powerful. Before Webflow, I was using WordPress and was an organizer for my local WordPress community here, and was one of the organizers for WordCamp Miami, which is one of the biggest WordCamps that takes place in the United States. But as much as I enjoyed WordPress, I really found it pretty frustrating. I didn't necessarily have the technical skills to do some of the things that I wanted to build, or I would need to bring somebody else in. I felt like I spent a lot of time trying to understand what was going on within a theme, because even though there was a set process with how templates were supposed to be formatted, people did different things. And so it was always kind of, well, how do I do a custom post type with this theme, and on and on and on. So I'd been looking on and off for an alternative, and I would go to Wix, I would look at Wix, I would look at some of the other things that were out there, and just kept coming back to, hey, WordPress is where it's at, and it's got 30% of the market. roughly, and that's just the way that it is. And then basically kind of roughly this time 2 years ago, there was a tweet that I saw where someone said, "What is Webflow? Serious question." And just something about that tweet really was like, I wonder what that is. And so I kind of clicked through and went on and discovered myself on the Webflow blog. And surprisingly, it was a blog that I had been following because I really liked their content, but I had never taken a look at what the product was. And so I kind of started to take a look over the course of a weekend, started to play around a bit with the tool, and was fortunate enough that I discovered that there was a meetup that was going to be happening a couple hours away from where I live that included Nelson. If any of you are in the Webflow space, you know Nelson, aka the Pixel Geek, was going to be talking about Webflow versus WordPress. It was going to be a head-to-head competition that Raimar Tirado, who now works for FinSuite, was putting on. So I drove up to that, and it was really what I had been looking for in terms of an alternative to WordPress, and that kind of caused me to shift from WordPress and started doing things within Webflow. I ended up going to No Code Conference, which was in San Francisco in 2019, and the next one is coming up here virtually in late November. So if you're not signed up for that, would highly recommend that. And going to that conference kind of opened up a chance for me to meet people from all over the world doing kind of different types of things. And as part of that conference, I started to realize I'd actually been doing no code work for a while and hadn't even realized it because I'd been using Zapier as part of the things that I was building in WordPress. And so just sort of gradually, I started to move over to Webflow. And it's kind of, one of those things that, kind of once you get a taste of it, it's hard to let go with it. I did find, so I've seen a question in the chat about what are the prerequisites for learning Webflow? Do you need to have HTML, CSS knowledge? And that is something that I think, depending upon what your existing background is, the approach for getting into Webflow varies. So I felt fortunate that I had familiarity from having done WordPress content, but I all of a sudden realized I didn't really know CSS. I didn't really understand the box model. There were a number of concepts that I just didn't have down. And so not knowing some of that, even though Webflow is very visual, it didn't quite click for me as quickly as I think that it does for some people. I know one of the things about my learning style is that for whatever reason, I'm not very good with just the simple rules. I only start to grasp things once I start to get into all the exceptions. And so for me, getting into understanding, taking a look more at CSS and those types of things really helped me fully start to understand how to use those different configurations within the Webflow style panel. So a lot of it, I think, depends upon what's your existing skill set. And then two, what is it that you want to build? Are you someone who is more of a designer and wants to focus on design? Or are you someone who's maybe more of a tinkerer and interested in data and structure and those kinds of things? Because that, you maybe wanted to focus more on, say, collections and how data moves around and those types of things. So in some ways, some of my background with Webflow has been a little bit atypical. So I have had, when I was starting out, I did have folks who were starting to progress with their Webflow career and had clients that were kind of in some ways low paying for them. And they wanted to move up and they needed somebody to pass projects off to. So some of the first paying projects that I got were basically from relationships that I had established with other people where they were trying to move up what they were doing and needed to hand off their clients to someone else, which was great for me continuing to grow my skill set. In some ways, some of those clients maybe weren't sometimes some of the lower paying clients can require some of the most handholding. So in some ways, some of those are not always necessarily the most desirable clients. Another thing that helps me kind of get my feet wet further is I started doing subcontracting work with someone who did SEO, and that was kind of his main strength, was making sure that sites were doing well on their marketing side, making sure that the SEO was there and those types of things. And he would go in and kind of tinker a little bit with sort of basic design changes, but wasn't capable of or interested in learning Webflow really well to take care of some of the other things. So that was where I would come in and take care of those things. One of the things that I found kind of difficult with subcontracting someone else was each project was done with a different style. And there's that classic joke about div 457 or div 123. And that was definitely a lot of those types of things, or just not clear class naming. And that got frustrating for me and kind of made me realize, this subcontracting wasn't necessarily one of the types of things that I wanted to do. And as part of being active in the community, kind of this a little bit to the question about niche roles seen popping up, I've been a little bit surprised at some of the opportunities that have just kind of landed in my lap as a result of just being very vocal and out there about doing Webflow and no code work. So one of the things that I did for a while was I was a contractor with Webflow, and I worked with their template QA team. And so you may be familiar that Webflow has a template marketplace, and before those templates appear on the marketplace, they get vetted to make sure that they meet certain standards that Webflow has set. And so that is a skill set that maybe that's something that's kind of a little bit of a niche thing that may not necessarily be obvious. I certainly wasn't expecting anyone to reach out to me and say, hey, we need help doing this. You've got, Webflow expertise. You can, help us, qualify and vet these things because you understand the tool and you understand what good, you have a sense of what good design is and also how things should be coded. So that was sort of one thing. Another niche thing that has kind of popped up for me personally has been, again, and this is part of me understanding Webflow, but also other no-code tools, is helping people with people who are creating content courses, going through and helping them with course design, helping out with beta testing those courses when they do the videos for those things, taking a first pass at editing those videos. So a video editor who maybe has really great video editing skills may not necessarily know, hey, they screwed up here. This should not be in the final cut. But I'm able to go through and mark those types of things so that somebody else can go off and do those things. So one of the things that I think is very exciting with Webflow is that there are these sort of niche and unusual types of things that are starting to pop up that I certainly were not on my radar. I had just been thinking, hey, Webflow, you're either going to be a designer or a developer and you make websites, and that's the end of it. But I think there are opportunities out there that if you take a look at kind of your existing skill set and, what is it within a business that maybe, so for example, let's say maybe you're really interested in logistics or operations, how is it that you could help a business streamline things related to maybe referrals, how leads are being captured on a website, and putting that through into a CRM so that they're more efficient. And knowing Webflow and knowing how to create landing pages that help convert, is one of those things that could be an opportunity. So, and then with that, I've just been kind of building. So I've been working with other kind of folks on some of their projects for sites, friends and family, other kinds of referrals. And then there are a few projects that I've been working on that scratch my own itch of having been a product developer and not being able to do building. So that's been sort of exciting to be building my skill set and starting to see some of the things that I've wanted to see out in the world, being able to actually take a stab at building those. So just kind of glancing over to the chat here. So if I haven't answered the niche roles question, please kind of add that. Please let me know. I'm going to move on to the next one. And Duri, if there's other, is it good to go into Q&A now, do you think?
Yeah, she said yes. And
Okay.
thank you, Kamika, for asking that question. Great question. So the next question I actually received was, do you see it being a replacement for WordPress soon?
I don't see it as a replacement for WordPress soon, just because WordPress has such a huge chunk of the market and has been around for a while. But I don't think, I don't think that they've been evolving and keeping up with the times and with the technology. And each time I feel like I do still have some sites that are on WordPress, and it's that constant trying to update plugins, making sure that your site is secure. There's just a lot of overhead. The reason that I think it's still going to stick around is one of the reasons, like some of the folks that I kind of support, the website is sort of a marketing brochure piece, and they created it a couple years ago, and it's still meeting their needs. They're not going out and doing any kind of rebrand or anything that would really require a lot of changes. So until those folks start to have more of a interest to move to another platform, WordPress is going to be around. I also I have really struggled with the Gutenberg project and such that WordPress has been undertaking. It's been a project that has been going on for several years, and it just doesn't quite seem to be ending. So I think it's going to be around for a while, but I do think the days are numbered.
Makes sense. Another question we received: how do you educate clients to go for Webflow or any no-code technologies? What has been your process, if any?
I mostly have been working with folks that are already on Webflow or interested in Webflow. So I actually haven't had to do any kind of education on converting over. The folks that I have worked on who have had WordPress, they're not interested in making a move at all. So they just don't want to. The website is kind of a marketing piece, and so they're not interested in. It works fine for them. It looks good. They're not interested in moving over to a shiny new object. And I think from talking with other folks, what I've been hearing has been that folks are starting to come to them more and more wanting Webflow, and so that they haven't had to do the sales pitch. So I think there's starting to be less of that because they've got better name recognition.
Makes sense. Yeah. So the other question we've got is Webflow for startups only, or is it a landing page thing, or can I do something more complex in that line essentially? Yeah.
No, that's a great question. So I do think that is a little bit of a misconception. There are some agencies that are out there that basically are branding themselves as doing websites for startups. And so I think that kind of feeds into a little bit of, hey, this is a new technology. Hey, this agency is focused on just doing for startups. And so that kind of can leave an impression that it's just for startups, but it's not. So Webflow over the past year or so has been adding in more and more enterprise features. They've added in, for example, like team accounts. One of the things that's going to be coming out at No Code Conference is their support for members. And so those are all pieces of functionality that is more than just for landing page builder, or more than just a startup. So being able to do more and more with it. The product did start out originally as a landing page builder. And so that probably also kind of feeds in a little bit to the conception that it is a landing page builder. And there's some cool things that you can do if you are looking to do landing pages with Webflow. So for example, if you are wanting to A/B test a bunch of ads, maybe you can spin up a lot of different landing pages very easily with Webflow, either in Webflow directly or by connecting a Webflow collection with, say, Airtable, and just dynamically creating a lot of content.
Makes a lot of sense, right? Because a lot of times people assume that it's just, hey, it's just a website builder, right? It's just pushed around. But honestly, I've seen such amazing examples, including the ones you said, A/B testing. And, I've also seen some MVPs. One company which we work for, they made a mobile prototype completely in Webflow. Like it loads only on the phone, it doesn't load on the desktop, and it tests exactly using Hotjar, where they were able to track, okay, where are people actually going? So it's more effective as a great prototyping tool because it's direct data, right? I don't have to fool around. The technology is in place. There's no in-between step of finding a heat map. None of those things actually come through. So it's something that I found this is coming a big and entry point for prototypers is easier now. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and I think I was just really fast just to add to that. I mean, like you mentioned, like apps. If Webflow makes it so easy to develop across different screen sizes, instead of developing an app for iPhone and just being a limited market, you can use Webflow in order to create something that's responsive mobile without needing to have an app. So again, prototyping and then building and scaling, and yeah, more than just for startups.
awesome. Yes. So that's absolutely, I think we answered another question as the same thing. So that's nice. 2 for 1. All right. So another question is it better for people who take up Webflow to freelance or to look for in-house opportunities?
I think some of it kind of depends upon your personal goals. So there was a conversation that was happening yesterday where I think there were a lot of really great points that were made. So if you're just starting out in your career, one of the things with working in-house is that you can be part of a team. And so you can hone in on certain skills that you may need to later go freelance. It also means that maybe you're not trying to work on building your skill set and building your business and billing and all these other pieces. And so you can just work on doing your skill set, and then maybe you're planning and working towards going freelance a couple years out. If you've got some more experience under your belt and you want to have more control over your time and potentially your income, going freelance early may be right for you. If it kind of depends on how you learn and what you want to do. I don't know that there's any perfect right answer. So I would say kind of just sit down and think about where you are with your career. What is it that you want to get? Where are your weak points? I mean, taking a real examination of where are you weak. Maybe if you're not necessarily very good at business development or closing sales, maybe being part of it, being in-house could be helpful to you. If you have a chance to be in-house at a well-known or well-respected agency that could then be good or useful for you when you want to go freelance, that you're able to then say as part of your resume, hey, I worked at such and such, that's another factor to weigh.
Awesome. Shamika, do let us know. Makes sense. Great. That's a thumbs up. Awesome. So you have another question. If somebody is interested in learning web development, would you still ask them to stop and consider learning no code?
I'm not entirely sure that I guess I'm still kind of processing the question. I don't know that I can.
Sorry. I was just clarifying. Probably they meant, should they learn coding versus going no code? That's what they meant.
Okay, got it. No, that's a great, yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So when I first started out, I was kind of like, I would see folks saying that no code got them into coding. And I was like, I don't believe that. What doesn't make any sense. In some ways, that kind of undermines the concept of visual development and no code, because like it's saying, hey, you don't need to know how to code. And I had sat down a couple of times when I was like doing WordPress work, trying to learn PHP, trying to learn JavaScript, because I kind of needed some of that to do some of the things I wanted to do. And I could just never, ever grasp it. And so would always have to get help elsewhere and find workarounds. And it kind of limited some of the things that I was able to do. But what I have found for me is that I'm actually now starting to get into a bit of coding. I'm not, my husband's a Java developer. I'm never going to be a Java developer. I'm never going to be that hardcore, but I've started using APIs. I've started writing JavaScript. I've started doing scripting in Airtable. And there, I think, is something about working with the visual tools that somehow you start to get a certain level of foundation that, at least for me, I was then able to start to layer in. Since I had the concepts down, it was then now how do I get, what code phrase do I need in order to do X? So I think they go very close to one another. And again, depending upon the types of things that you want to build, I think no code can be a great introduction into other pieces of coding that you may need. Because as great as no code tools are, there are limitations. So one of the limitations that I've encountered has been, as much as I love Webflow collections, there's only so many ways that you can nest things, and there's only so many relationships that you can have, and a collection can only have so many fields. And so for one of the things that I've been trying to build, I've gone a couple of different iterations, and what I've currently settled on is I'm going to be using Xano, which on Twitter, they're no code backend. But in order to pull data from Xano, I need to know JavaScript. And so that's one of the things that's been kind of forcing me. Oh, yes, thanks for putting that in the chat, no code backend. That's one of the things that, yeah, so it's, I guess that's a long way of saying, you can start with no code, but don't feel that that you can't touch code at all. So,
can I add to this question?
Oh, please. Anything, please. Yeah, I'm not used to just talking, so I would love to have more.
Yeah. So Tosif, what Colleen said is 100% right. You cannot supplement this versus this. So there are two goals, right? Either you're trying to build something as a business, or you're trying to build something as a career. So if you're building as a business, you need to have as less friction as possible, because your goal is to get something out to the market. But if you're building as a career, you have to understand that it doesn't live in silo. It lives among all of it. Now, you would have seen that people in no code have different backgrounds. They have a design background like me. Colleen has a product development background, right? So without knowing these things, no code is a little hard to understand. You have to know or have empathy towards them. So in management language, they call it as a T-shaped individual. You know horizontally, but you have a strength in certain area, so that you can look at every new subject with these perspectives. So you have to know stuff. You can't say, I will not know, don't do this, don't do that. It doesn't work that way, especially when you're trying to make it a career. That was something as a golden advice given to me, and it works wonders. We have to keep looking how much depth we can go into a certain field, because we love the subject or we're very curious about it. Yeah.
I love that T-shirt. That's great.
Yeah, I love that, right? It was a serious mentorship thing that I had gotten, and it's been ingrained in my head, right? Awesome. So we have another question for you: how to be more active in a community like Webflow community, so I can get better opportunities, whether visibility or jobs. How do I do that?
No, that's a great question. Some of it maybe depends upon what your favorite social platforms are. So are you someone who likes Discord? Do you like Facebook? Do you like Slack? Do you like Twitter? And depending upon the platform that you like, there's different groups that are forming or exist. Some of them are pretty closed, and so they may not be super visible. So it's good to be asking around, because if somebody is in a group that you know, they may be then willing to tell you, hey, yeah, there's this closed group over here, come join. So unfortunately, in some ways, it's not always super obvious that they are out there. I think this is the week of asking that question of what are the Webflow communities, because I think this is the 4th time this week that I've answered this question. There's a couple other places too. So Webflow has events.webflow.com. And so there are chapter leaders all around the world who hold events. And so that was one of the ways that I started to get into the Webflow community, was through a local meetup. A lot of those meetups have been virtual over the past year and a half. I love Twitter, so I'm on Twitter quite a bit. So following the hashtag Webflow, following no code, following both those hashtags is a way of kind of getting intro to folks. Let's see here. Also, kind of couple of the other things that I'm a part of, because I got into the Webflow Sarasota meetup and started working with Ron Martirado. He subsequently now is the CMO at FinSuite, and FinSuite does these live streams on Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays. And so there's a very active community of folks that connect through there. There's also kind of a Slack group that's associated with that. And can happy to invite anyone who's interested in being a part of that to that. There's also a group of some of the Webflow organizers and some other folks have started to get together sort of in this particular no code Slack group. We've been starting to do events. One of the next events is on November 1st. And I can put a link in the chat as well for anyone who's interested in attending that. And so what we're doing on the 1st is an open mic and a help desk. And so we've been trying to do those every couple of weeks, and it's just a chance to take a virtual stage and gather for 5 minutes and show what you've built and connect with other people and get feedback. So if anyone, events.webflow, so Webflow Discord. There's also, if you're interested in UI and UX, there's Floxies, which is a group dedicated for women. Pixel Geek used to have a community. Am I giving folks enough places to start? And maybe I need to do a post after this with more with links to direct examples.
Yes, I think you should share your thing from I Heart No Code. I think you have some links up there, right, from Webflow stuff.
I do. So I'm actually, and this weekend I was working on updating that list of communities, because I have found some of them are a little bit defunct and I was missing some. So that's on my to-do list for this week.
Yeah, I think we can put a list out. I can also share it on the Discord for us later. I'll take it from your website and share it in. But most common things I think you've covered for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
Pixel Geek, Child, great designers. And some of it is too, like, again, I'm a bit biased because I'm more Twitter. If there's a designer that you like, take a look at who that person is following and what hashtags are they using. And part of it is too just asking questions. So whatever platform you pick, if it's Facebook, if it's Slack, if it's Discord, ask people questions about how they've built things. And if you're not comfortable asking publicly, start out sending a direct message. People love to talk about what they're building, and happy to answer questions. So let's take that first step.
That's amazing, right? So a lot of times people assume that communities are in silo, like majorly the brand themselves won't have a huge community, they have built from ground up. It's rare. So you have to go search for the super fans and come up with and join their communities and find those people who are like super enthusiastic about the whole thing, right? I found Mackenzie Child, actually through Mackenzie Child's way of doing design, because biased towards design. I found his things really good. And then of course I went, prodded more from there. So the template store is also a great way to find out who are the designers who are doing really well with Webflow, and the Webflow Showcase, that's another place that I really like as well. And if you have a local chapter, do be active in that, or run your local chapter. If you don't have your city's local chapter, own it, so you can have a lot of fun organizing those sessions and spread your love for Webflow there.
Yeah, no, all great advice. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. So I actually received one question on DMs. One of the question, I think it's not worded right, but the intention of the question was to ask, what kind of remote opportunities are opening up in Webflow? Do you have like an overview that you have seen so far?
Yeah, for me personally, everything has been remote. So I live in an area that is not at all tech savvy. And I mean, when I say that, I have strangers who come up and hand me their phones. This is an area where people come on vacation, and it's basically for retirees. And so, yeah, I just think everything is remote. And as I've just been talking with folks that I know, that the company that my husband works for, they're basically all, the company that he works for, they used to hire only local, and now basically anywhere they're hiring whoever has the best skills. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. So yeah, I think more and more, just over the past 2 years, just how comfortable so many people have now gotten with Zoom and async work, that's just really just opened up the possibilities on remote.
So one other question from this same thing, but it's kind of like about the pricing aspect of Webflow, because it tends to be a little like on the higher side. Even for this side of the world, it's quite expensive, right? So obviously people start looking for alternatives and all of those things. But how do I still convince somebody that it's worth the price? Is there something that we can talk in that direction? Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's a great question. So Webflow did announce last week that for educational related, for students, and I think in educational institutions, that Webflow is now free. So if you are just learning, if you're associated with something that qualifies, that price has basically has gone away. I had heard rumblings. I think Vlad mentioned on his April live stream call that they were looking at the pricing model with Webflow, and I'm wondering that, I mean, they're going to have product announcements coming out of NoCodeConf, and so not that I have any inside baseball or line into this, but I'm wondering if there's going to be some pricing announcements coming. So the fact that they've now offered a free option that had not previously been there, I think that's the start of something on revising pricing. So I'd kind of stand by and see what happens with in the coming weeks to see if that actually does pan out. I do think that there is something on the Webflow site related to pricing and how to talk about pricing with folks. I can't think of the link at the moment, but I think I have seen something there. And then another thing, like when I first started using Webflow, I was feeling like it was really expensive compared to WordPress. But when I started to then break down, say, plugins and how much plugins were costing, you may be paying for a plugin once a year, and so you may kind of forget about some of those costs. But as I started to sit down and really take a look at, hey, how much is this WordPress site costing versus Webflow? In some cases, Webflow was actually a better deal. It looked more expensive on paper, but it didn't actually end up being that way. Plus, there was the added bonus of this whole security aspect related to Webflow. Is just I've not had hacking issues and those types of things that I've had with Webflow with WordPress, and so that's been a peace of mind, and there's been value in that to me. So if you're talking to someone coming from another platform, one approach may be just to kind of break it down and see how much actually are they spending, and would they really be spending less with that other platform than with Webflow.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I did do one spreadsheet that basically tallied the plugin cost and Webflow cost, and Webflow was way cheaper in terms of that. Yeah. So that's awesome. So I got another question. Guys, please post your questions openly. Don't have to DM me. But the question was essentially about more junior designers or developers picking up Webflow and somebody not so senior picking up. So what that leads to happen is you'll have more fancy dribblish looking interactions rather than something that's actually working and production ready. So how do I become somebody who is a production ready? Is there some guide on Webflow for that?
I don't know that I've seen anyone break that down. And I do think it kind of taps into something where I feel like I've in some ways hit on certain aspects a little bit of a plateau. And I do think there probably, and maybe that's kind of, maybe I'm personally kind of feeling that myself. I think there are some sources of content out there that are very good at when you're at a certain level. So I think Pixel Geek does a good job of when you're just starting out. I think, oh gosh, I can see his picture, but I can't think of his name. He's got a course on awards. I think he's British, but he does amazing animations, but they go by, he goes through it so fast. You got to have a lot of knowledge in order to follow his tutorials. So I think it's just knowing, kind of like when you go to school, you start out in this grade and then you graduate to this grade and then you graduate to this grade. So, you may be looking at content from this person for a while, and then it may be time to move on to, say, a Timothy Ricks or a Mackenzie Child. I'm not entirely sure that I've answered the full question. Is there a part that I didn't address? I guess I don't see it in the chat.
Yeah, because they DM'd me the question. So you answered part of it, but like if you have any go-to resource for having Webflow best practices, I think that's the essence of the question. It would be like something, rookie, including me, did things like div and just left it there. But
yeah.
If I actually have to have some best practices, what would be a guide? If you have one, or we can, if you referenced one, what would be some good methods there?
Yeah, I guess one of the things that I kind of like that whole div bit that I goofed up with a lot when I was just starting out was I was starting out with a blank canvas. And so I was making up a lot of stuff, and yeah, that was I needed training wheels, and I should have used training wheels, and I wasn't. Finding a framework by another designer that you like, I think is a good place to start and then iterate on. So, there's a number of UI kits out there. Flowbase has things, FinSuite has things. I personally love Hatch from Mackenzie Child, just because his approach to things fits well with how I think about things. And start with that. Take a look at clonables that are out there that you like. Open up the code, see how they're done, and then once you kind of have a bit of a foundation, starting to add your own flavor to things. So maybe how someone is doing a class naming, you like the concept, but there's something that doesn't quite click for you. You know, adjust so that works for you. I think sometimes sites like Dribbble are just very flat and don't give you the full, you know, it may look pretty on that one page, but that way something's structured isn't how people actually navigate or do things on the web. And so there are some sites out there that are like 30-day design challenges. So maybe kind of Googling for that, finding one that clicks, and go through and do those daily challenges. And so that's also kind of a way to sort of build up. So, and those are at different levels. So find one that's kind of at the level that you're at currently and then move on. Another thing to do is take a look at sites like awards, find things that you like, and then just try and build them, or also from the Webflow showcase.
I think that's super helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Right. So, yeah, I also had this question from me. Like when there's a transition phase of understanding this, but then the Webflow school or the education videos that are already on the Webflow website, I found them not to be a great guide to actually start with. Sorry about it. It's a contrarian opinion, but I actually didn't find them very useful. I had to first mimic and do all of them. So what do you think about this? Is this right?
I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, you're right. I started out going through the Webflow videos, and I do think there's a lot of good with the Webflow videos, but they're just like being at like a cocktail party and going around and sampling a bunch of different things. And so now you have all these little pieces, but what do you do with the pieces? And so I think those videos, so even though I started with them, I think in some ways that was maybe not so great. They have subsequently come out with a portfolio course, which I think is a little bit more methodical. And so that's where maybe some of these kind of more, it may make sense to go through kind of a course than where someone is building on skill sets than just trying to like figure it out on your own. And I guess I kind of did the figure it out on my own without any guidance or projects, and that was maybe not such a good thing. And at that time, like Mackenzie Child didn't have like his course out, so some of the courses weren't out there at the time. So yeah, the landscape's changed a little bit. But I really liked how you put that about the Webflow University courses.
Yeah. So at what point did you feel that, I've reached a good level in Webflow? At what point did you feel that?
That's a good question. I, in some ways, don't feel like I've reached that, but I think it comes in waves. And I think a wave for me this year has been starting to realize I'm able to answer other people's technical questions. So there's tons of technical questions that I can't answer, but I'm able to help other folks out of, hey, I can't figure this out. Why do I do this? How do I do this? What is that? And so I don't know that you ever fully get that. I mean, I think some of the folks that are just absolutely amazing probably do that. But I think mostly for everybody else, it's you kind of get to a point and then you're able to kind of do a lot of stuff. But you're also you're now starting to look at, oh, I wonder how I do this. I wonder how I do this. And so then there's the next tier and the next tier and the next tier. So I would just say, keep going. And there probably isn't, it's a marathon.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think you're right. We just have to one up ourselves and keep going on those things. Yes, absolutely right. So anybody have a question? Hey, Rahul, hi. Do you have a question for us?
No, actually, I don't. I think you guys already answered most of them. I was more concerned about the pricing, but Colleen gave a great answer on that. And I think now I would be able to also convince my clients to get on Webflow based on pricing. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Yeah. So, Suraj, do you have any questions? Did you get your answers?
Everything is clear, Madhuri. No question.
Awesome. Yeah. Joseph, did we answer your question?
Yes, actually. In fact, I was going back with the Webflow 101. Now I think I'll explore it a little more, starting with this McKinsey Childs course. So thank you for that. Like the heads up, basically.
I think it makes a difference too when you're learning. If you have something that you know that you want to build, or that you like, or that resonates in some ways, at least I find that for me, of sometimes when I'm just going through exercises, they're kind of mindless and it doesn't quite click. So if you do start a course and it's not quite clicking, you don't always want to get research paralysis and analyze by doing too much research, but there's so many different folks out there that are teaching in different ways. And so if something isn't quite clicking, don't be afraid to look elsewhere.
Actually, I do have a question for Madhuri here. Madhuri, like as you know that I've already started learning Adalo. At this point, I was wondering, like, do I dabble into Webflow, or do I just start, like you said, go deeper into Adalo? Like, what would you like recommend?
Sure. I mean, I would say they both have different purposes. Adalo has a different purpose and a Webflow has a very different purpose. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And ultimately, it also depends on your context, right? Are you trying to be a no-code freelancer, or are you trying to be somebody who is going to be an Adalo expert? So depending on that, or even a deeper question, are you building this for someone, or are you learning this for yourself? Right? So that's essentially the path that you have to decide. And if you're learning for yourself, nobody can stop you, obviously, right? But if you're doing this for somebody else, and obviously it's their context, their brief, what they want to build, what they want to test, all those things come into picture. And if you're freelancing, then more tools in the arsenal, the better opportunities, better outlook on how to build stuff. So it depends on which path you want to go there.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Colleen, do you have something to add to that?
No, I think that's, very much agree with that. But I also think too, with no-code tools, I think there's a lot of transferable skills. So once you learn how to do certain things in one tool, another tool may not do it quite the same way, but you've got thinking in other pieces that are transferable. So.
Right. Thank you, Colleen.
Awesome. Yeah. So we're at last 5 minutes, guys. So if you have questions, this is your opportunity. Otherwise, no more questions. That's it. But seriously, thank you so much for the amazing questions. And Colleen, if you have a few words in wrapping for us, I would love to hear them. Yeah.
No, this is a great start to my day. It's a little bit earlier here. So thank you for all the great questions. I really love Webflow. I really love the community. And no code in general. So if you are more Adalo than Webflow, just, make yourself known. Reach out, comment on things, follow people, ask questions. And it is a very welcoming space, and much more so than I found WordPress. So I was a little timid and a little shy at first. And I guess if I could go back in time, I would tell myself I wouldn't have needed to do that. People aren't going to say, well, that's a stupid question or that type of thing. And show your work too as you're going. So, the social platform of your choice, if there's a group, if there's a place, share it on Twitter. This is KP is really a champion of build in public. And that's also a great way to find other people to connect with.
Absolutely. This is amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. But if you have anything, do put it down and say thank you to Colleen. give a virtual shout out, tweet it on Twitter. She graciously gave us the time to answer all our questions here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Umesh. Awesome.
Well, and I'm happy to, if people think of questions later, happy to answer them later too. So
Yes, please get onto her Twitter. Let me share her Twitter right away. Yes.
I may not know an answer, but if I can point you in the right direction, happy to do it.
Yes. Just searching for, yeah, found it. Awesome. Thanks, Suraj. Thanks, Trey. Thanks, Vineet. As long as we know that someone is listening. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously. Yes, you know somebody is listening when you start putting out valuable content for others. So try putting out something that somebody finds value, then obviously you will start building in the community.
Yeah. And sometimes too, if you don't get an answer, try again. You know, maybe because of the algorithm or whatever, maybe you just, the folks that saw it at the time may not have had an answer.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. See you in the next session. We all had a great time. See you. Bye.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Madhuri.
Bye.
Guys, thank you, Madhuri. Thank you, Colin.
See you, Nishi. See you, Mohammed. All right. So we're done.
Thank you so much.